Hi guys, Brendan from TAT here. I've got a car here, a Toyota Corolla, and I just want to run through some basic scan tool procedures. So it doesn't really relate specifically to this car, but I want to run through specifically the differences between manufacturer specific scan tool information and OBD2 generic, and also mainly talking about freeze frame data and how important it is. And then interestingly, on this late model Toyota, I believe it's 2015 Corolla, there's some advancements in freeze frame data that I'll show you in the Toyota section, where we're now starting to see, and we have been for a while on some vehicles, multiple freeze frame shots taken. So exactly when the DTC set, a bit after, and then we can see exactly the conditions that the vehicle was in, and it gives you a much better chance of recreating the situation. For most issues that we start to see are intermittent, and any piece of information you can take like that is certainly going to help you. So using the Solus Edge here just for the easy graphical interface, but it's pretty generic across any mid-range scan tool. You should have your manufacturer specific side and then your OBD2 generic side. So I like to describe it as two sides of the brain of the ECU basically, and you're going to get different things from each one. Sometimes the data will be exactly the same, but a lot of the time if it's something you're unsure of, I'll go into that OBD generic part if I'm just dealing with basic things like fuel trims and the sort, just so I can get some standardization. So by now hopefully you're all aware of the two different sides there. So as a bit of a demonstration, before we go into the manufacturer specific freeze frame, we're going to get just into the OBD2 generic side of it. And a lot of the time on your older vehicles, you're not going to get freeze frame data from the manufacturer specific side, whereas in OBD it's very rare not to have freeze frame attached to a fault code. So coming in here, this car, simple diagnosis, it was low on oil, so as far as the camshaft problem that it's got there, so I'm not really worried about the diagnosis, but we can see a code there. I'm going to go back and we're going to look at the freeze frame data. It's going to be set out differently in your scan tool, but you should be able to find it somewhere. And so just quickly, for anyone who's not familiar with it, we'll just get into there, but what I'm really sort of excited to show is the Toyota side of it, and a lot of manufacturers are expanding on this basic freeze frame data. So obviously going through there, we can see it's taken a freeze frame of when the fault's set, and I'm going to use that to guide my diagnosis, try and recreate the situation. So that's great. Now let's get back out of here, and I'm going to go into the manufacturer specific side. Actually, I was in this car before, so make the video a bit quicker, we're going to just bring up our previous vehicle. Okay, so another interesting thing between the two brains of the ECU, you'll see in here that there's a code that wasn't actually showing in OBD, and a lot of the time it can even be vice versa. Manufacturer won't show it, but OBD will, or you may get a different description based on the exact same code. So it's always good to check those two sides of it, unless you've got a really basic diagnosis. It's just about getting together as much information as you can. So those are the codes that we've got there. Now interestingly, I go to freeze frame, and the freeze frame for my P0010 is going to look exactly the same. I've been in there, it looks the same as OBD2 generic, but when I go to this startability malfunction freeze frame, you get some interesting points. I'll just let it focus for you. Sorry that that's dropped out. There we go. So anyone who's on a mobile and can't read it, basically what this is saying is that it's going to take multiple snapshots of the freeze frame data now. So you can pause your screen if you can read it and go through there. I'm going to continue through. Again, it's telling you exactly what these freeze frames are, when they were taken. And here we go, so a completely different type of layout. Now you can see that some of them weren't taken and some were. It still looks like it's updating itself, but really I've just massively increased how much data I can take on. It shows that it was all down around idle, so it was pretty much around the same area. And again, it's not something that I'm looking too much into. This isn't an existing type fault. We know that this thing had a weak battery, so it's not really a diagnosis. It's just something to show you. But putting all this all together, these are the kinds of things that we talk about when we're talking about putting together all the information that you've got for a diagnosis. So definitely make sure you're looking at that freeze frame data. So that's the first time I've seen that format on a Toyota, so fairly late model, 2015. I don't know what year that they brought that in, but it shows that manufacturers are now, starting to bring in different things like that, and it's definitely worth checking into, particularly if you weren't aware of freeze frame in the first place. So very, very important to be going between the two sides of the brain of the engine ECU and trying to extract as much data as you can before clearing a code. Something as simple as clearing a code is going to clear that freeze frame data. It's going to clear mode 6 data, which is another topic that we'll get into in its own at some point. But definitely think about what you're affecting before you just go ahead and clear a code. Try and get as much information as you can. Mash that save button so that you've got it for later. Something that doesn't seem relevant, you could circle back to it later in the diagnosis, and it could be the key that unlocks it.